Hello everyone, my name is Dr. T.S. Kurne in Department of Statistics, Rajarshi Chhatrapati Shahu College, Kolhapur. Today we discuss designs of experiment. Now let's start with simple designs of experiment. So, which types of design we have used in practical situation or daily situations for various situation. So, starts with introduction. Designs of experiment was invented by R.A. Fisher in 1920. And in designs of experiments, there are some steps to design the experiment. First, we plan the experiment. So, if we have some problem to plan which experiment is used in this problem. Then second step is obtaining relevant information regarding statistical hypothesis under study. So we decide what is your objectives and then you to find their hypothesis. Then third step, making the statistical analysis of the data. For example, we have used the data analyzed by graphical representation, tabular representation and some statistical testing, hypothesis of testing. And then last step is the observations obtained from carefully planned and well defined experiment in advance given entirely give the valid inference. After the making some statistical analysis, we made the conclusion and write the inference. So, basic definition of designs of experiment is it may be defined as logical construction of the experiment in which degree of uncertainty with which the inference is drawn may be well defined, or design of experiment is an efficient procedure for planning of experiments so that the data obtained can be analyzed to yield valid and objective conclusion. Now we see some basic terminology which have used in the designs of experiment. So we start with the first term is experiment. So what is meant by experiment? Experiment is a device or means it getting an answer to the problem under consideration. So experiment can be defined into two categories, absolute experiment and comparative experiment. Absolute experiment means taking only one value and comparative means comparison between two values. So we see the definition. Absolute experiment means determining the absolute value of some characteristics like obtaining or finding the correlation coefficient between the two variables in bivariate distributions or average height of the students. These examples are in the absolute experiment. The next is comparative experiment. Comparative experiments are designed to compare the effect of two objects or two types or two groups. So, examples are comparison of different fertilizers. Like if you have select the plot and you have to test which fertilizer is better to this crop or this land. So, this study we have using comparative experiment. And second example is different kinds of crops. The different types of crops means we have used one plot and in some region we used crop of type first. The same crop of type 2 means there is a variety of crop, means same crop but there is variety, and check which variety of crop is better in this experiment, which this experiment is called as a comparative experiment. The next is treatments. Various objects of comparative experiments are termed as treatment. Treatment means we have used in field experiment different types of fertilizers. This is called as a treatment. In hospital we have used the drugs on various patients. These different types of drugs is an treatment, or different type of crops used to checking which crop is better. So crop is a treatment. Then next is experimental units. So the treatment is used on some area which is called as an experimental unit. So, the smallest division of experimental material on which we apply the treatments and make the observations under study is defined as an experimental unit. In the field experiment, the plot is an experimental unit. In hospital, we have used the drug on patient. So, the patient is an experimental. Patients are experimental units. The next is blocks. Next terminology is blocks. So, in agriculture experiments, most of the times the experimental units are variety. Their data is heterogeneous. So, make the groups of homogeneous material, and this homogeneous group is called as a strata, or it is also called in terms and designs of experiment is block. In sampling, we have make stratified sampling, make the group homogeneous group, and this group is called as strata. The same meaning here used in blocks. So, homogeneous group or strata is called as a blocks. The next is yield, the measurement of variable under study on which different experimental units are called as a yield. Then next terminology, experimental error. In various experiment, there was some error will be arised, but in experiment, suppose we have arise large error, then this experiment will be not considered. So, suppose a large homogeneous field is divided into different plot of equal size or shape, and different treatments are applied to these plots. If the yield from some treatments are more or those of others, then the problem is that those of others, then whether the different yield due to treatment or due to the chance factor or any other extraneous variables which are controllable factor. So, we have to study. For example, in the field experiment, even if the same treatment is used on the plots, and the yields will not be still vary due to the different soil variety, soil fertility. Such variations yield from the plot to plot is due to the random factor which is beyond the human control, or such types of error which is beyond the human control is called as an experimental error. In standard definition, we define the experimental error is the error arises in the experiment due to random factor which is beyond to the human control. Such types of error is called as an experimental error. And this experimental error arises in the experiment due to following results. First result is the inherent variability in the experimental material. We have used various types of material in experiment. This is may be varied, then arises the experimental error. The second reason is we use improper technique of design. So, if you are not planned the technique, then arises the experimental error. Third is lack of representativeness of sample. We have not chosen the sample properly, then maybe arise experimental error. Next is precision. So, precision means in regular word we have used accuracy. So, accuracy, how to measure the accuracy? If the errors or the differences are minimizes, then the procedure is accurate. So, the reciprocal of variance of the mean is called as a precision, or it is the amount of information of design. It is denoted by some p. Then let x be the normal distribution which follows mean and variance. We have defined the precision in terms of variance in terms of parameters. Then x bar follows mu comma sigma square by n variance, and the precision of the design, what is the definition? It is a reciprocal of variance of mean. Variance of mean. So, what is the x bar? Variance of x bar? Sigma square by n. So, it is write as 1 divided by sigma square by n. So, simplification we get n divided by sigma square. So, by definition, the p value precision is equals to n divided by sigma square. Sigma square is the variance of any particular variables which follows the normal distributions. So, next terminology is the layout of an experiment. Actual allocation of experiment to the experimental unit is called as the layout of experiment. An experiment is laid out, it is also called as a frame of the designs, also it is called as a layout of the design, and the experiment is laid out to increase the efficiency or to achieve validity and to maintain economy. All three factors are necessary to increase efficiency, to achieve validity and to maintain economy. These three factors are important. In this case, arrangement of experimental unit is done row wise or column wise, dependence on the heterogeneity of experiment material. So following 7 steps are in the experimentation to find the solution. But we discuss one by one. First is define and state the problem. First you define the problem, for which problem is you have studied, identify the objective and develop the hypothesis. Third is design and conduct the experiment to test the hypothesis, collect the data, first collect the data, then analyze the data, then interpret this data by using this analyzing result and draw the conclusion about this hypothesis. So this is the all these major steps involving in the experimentation. Thank you.